So yes, if you don't mind, Peter, let's bring up the previous onward, although we have moved on to this onward. But just as a reminder, somebody said.
The previous onwards, 1 second, please.
Yeah, I think that was the attachment I sent you. No, I know it didn't go around. Just to get people back on track we are actually in the next, we're on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, but let's just bring us back. Oh, thank you. Pinch for a larger viewing. Yeah, there we are. Yom Tov, just to remind ourselves, Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah, remember falling on Shabbos. In the Beis HaMikdash, they blew, but not outside the big Beis HaMikdash area. And once the Beis HaMikdash sadly was destroyed, then Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted anywhere where there is a Bezdin, and Rabbi Lozo says no, only in Yavne. In other words, you need sorry, if you scroll down a bit to get the Mishnah in the focus. Sorry, just come down. Can we see them? Oh, that's it. A bit more. Yeah, there we are. Yes. So with the first view says that he instituted in front of it. Well, we'll see. But Chol Mokom, anywhere where there is a Bezdin, but the Mishnah doesn't actually say where. So if there is a Bezdin somewhere, anywhere in the whole city, we'll more about that in a minute. Rabbi Lozo says no. Lo hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai elo beyavne. Yavne, because he's especially the very large Bezdin, 71. And of course, they moved from place to place where that was moving. And then they come back and say, no, it's not true. Anywhere, well, there's a machlokas, as you can see here, where if there's a place where there is a Bezdin, and we spoke about a difference between where the Bezdin's permanent or it's just there a temporary, but not even a smaller Bezdin, that will be good enough. We know the halacha. Nowadays, we do make sure that it actually is a Bezdin, but it's got to be, we paskin today that, of course, we don't blow anywhere. But then you've got this statement, and I say more linking up with that. The Mishnah then says something which sounds strange. There's something else where Yerushalayim was greater than Yavne. Well, we haven't mentioned anything yet, so clearly there's something missing here. It's almost like taken for granted, because the Mishnah says, and not only that, there was something else where Yerushalayim was greater than Yavne. Well, we haven't mentioned anything where Yerushalayim had any particular halacha which was greater, or if you like, different to Yavne. And then we say, so let's have a look at that. Right, if you just pick up the very last line, please, Peter, of this Omud, before we move to the last couple of words, actually, 3 words at the bottom. Scroll down, right, there we are. Omar Rav Huna. So it's on this last statement. Omar lo echod Yavne ve'echod kol mokom. Remember, they came back and said, no, any place where there is a Bezdin, which is reputable. And we said in the end, if it's there permanently, then you could blow. That was the view. But then Omar Rav Huna. Rav Huna said last 3 words as we now move to the Omar that we've all got, so we can go back to seeing people. Thank you, Peter. So, oh, no, we don't do that. Yeah, we'll come back to that in a bit later. So, Rav Huna said about this point about, as we said, if you've got a Bezdin permanent, doesn't have to be the full 71 Bezdin, according to the views in the Mishnah, that's okay, but there is a stipulation. Omar Rav Huna, the top of the page of Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, Ve'im Bezdin. That's very interesting. There's this statement going round, as we'll see. I don't think we'll get to the second half of this. That Rav Huna made a statement, said that no, the halacha only applies with the Bezdin. Now, we're not even sure when he made this statement, sadly, through time, it's not clear what he was talking about when he, as we'll see, there are two possibilities where those words would actually come on to explain. So at the moment we say, V'im Bezdin, it's referring to our Mishnah. So even if you are blowing in a place on a Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, and it's a place where there is a Bezdin, it must be im Bezdin. Top line of Rashi, hu de takino. We only blow with the Bezdin. Now, of course, that itself is ambiguous. What does it mean with the Bezdin? There are two options. Either with Bezdin means, as we see here, right in front of them. You go right in front of the Bezdin and you blow the shofar there. You can have individuals doing that. That's fine in corners, in different rooms, right in front of the Bezdin. Or in Bezdin means the time, because, yes, they weren't actually judging financial cases on Rosh Hashanah, but they would sit. So in other words, you've got the rabbi is available for shilas that could crop up, and therefore they are available. So does it mean in Bezdin at the time when the Bezdin is sitting, and there seemed to be this respect and fear of the Bezdin sitting, only then you could blow in a place where there was a Bezdin, or does it mean actually right in front of them?
Why do you say financial matters? They could have been judging anything, could have been getting get or tuition or other matters.
Well, they wouldn't be. Because there's a dinner. There is a halacha actually not paskening dinin on Shabbos Yom Tov, so they wouldn't be paskening necessarily going into. You're right. Sorry, you're saying they wouldn't be doing gittin.
Well, no, I don't know why. I'm just asking why you just said.
No, you're right.
Financial matters.
Yeah, no, you're right. There could be other things they wouldn't be paskening either. They wouldn't be paskening about, a gittin. You're writing gittin, clearly not. But they would be sitting for questions that arose that would be relevant for Yom Tov. You're right. So financial would be a typical one that they wouldn't be judging financial matters on Yom Tov. So the top line says V'im Bezdin, my V'im Bezdin, Bifnei Bezdin. What that means is right in front of the Bezdin. So if we're paskening, or according to the view in the Mishnah, that you can blow on Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, where there is a Bezdin, it means Bifnei Bezdin, right in front of them. La'afuke, this comes to exclude, coming out, Shalo Bifnei Bezdin. If it's not in front of Bezdin, even if Bezdin are sitting and you're in the same place, the same town as the Bezdin, that's not good enough. It's only if you actually went in front of the Bezdin, presumably they'll give you a room to blow, as we'll see in a minute, Delo. Okay? So that's the view. Rav Huna made this statement, Ve'im Bezdin. We're not even sure what he said it about. At the moment, we think he said it on this Mishnah. Explaining what he meant in front of Bezdin. Okay? Says the Gemara, second line down, massive Rava. Rava's got, like a tiyufta, a very strong question. And the question is based on the Mishnah. Now, we said in the Mishnah, the next statement in the Mishnah says, V'oid zois, there's something more, Hoyso Yerushalayim Yisera Av Yavneh. Where it comes to these halachas of shofar, there was something that Yerushalayim had extra on Yavneh, something else, V'oid zois. Now, clearly, there's some other halacha we've got to fit in there that then you can say, and there was something else. Now, says the Gemara to start with, my v'oid zois, what does it mean, something more? Ilema, fourth line down, if you'll say, kudiktoni, as it's actually written in the Mishnah. So we've got a statement about in the Mishnah, and then it says, and there's something else. Says the Mishnah, you can't say something else. We haven't mentioned anything as the first halacha where there's a difference between Yavne and Yerushalayim. We haven't discussed differences between Yavne and Yerushalayim. It should have said Zois. This is different, and we'll see in a minute what that is. There was a difference between Yavne and Yerushalayim, but this is meant to be the second difference. What's the first difference? You with me? Again, if it's just as the Mishnah's written, we have not got a first difference, sounds mathematical, first differences between Yerushalayim and Yavne, that we should say va'oid zois. Says the Gemara, zois mi boile. It should have said, this is the difference. And I'll explain to you what that difference is. The Mishnah says that actually in Yerushalayim, you didn't even have to be in the Beis Din. You could be anywhere, not even in the city of Yerushalayim, as long as you were near enough to see Yerushalayim or maybe get to Yerushalayim. That was also going to be good enough. But we haven't mentioned anything else yet that this should be the second difference. Do you see what I mean? The Mishnah has not mentioned differences between Yerushalayim and Yavne. Elo, so you're going to have to come up with a difference, and then it needs to flow in nicely to the second. You sometimes have that, where the Mishnah is being said, where it's almost like taken for granted there's something else in that Mishnah. And then sometimes the Gemara says, Chisure mechsra, something's missing from the Mishnah, which is taken for granted. There must be some piece in between that will then link to the last part of the Mishnah, which says va'oid zois. Now, says the Gemara, I'll tell you what the missing link, the missing piece is. Elo d'Yerushalayim toikim yechidim. Maybe the difference is that in Yerushalayim, individuals could blow, u'b'Yavne ein toikin yechidim. But in Yavne, there were no individuals blowing the shofar, right? And then the Mishnah will say there's another difference between the two. So the suggestion at the moment is that maybe the difference is that in Yerushalayim, individuals could blow the shofar. Whereas in Yavne, ein toikim yechidim. What does it mean, ein toikim yechidim? Only the person in charge selected by the Beis Din would blow in Yerushalayim. Maybe that's the difference. Says the Gemara, no, that doesn't seem right. And I'll tell you why. Ki osa Rab Yitzchok, Bar Yosef, Rab Yitzchok came, Oman said, Ki Masayim Shlichutza de Tzibura Tkiya B'Yavne. When the main Baal Tokea in Yavne, in front of the Beis Din, he was the main man. When he'd finished, continued the Gemara, Lo Shoma Inish Kol One. A person couldn't hear himself, couldn't hear himself think, couldn't hear himself talk. Mikal Tikue Diechidoi. Square brackets, that means it's to be included. Individuals started blowing the shofar. It was so not everybody, wouldn't quite say, but like a firework display, and everybody was blowing. And it sounds very much like in all different corners of Yavne, they were blowing. You went out in the streets, you could hear the shofar all over the place, right? So what do we see from there? So, what does that mean? It sounds like, therefore, that individuals were blowing the shofar in Yavne. If they're blowing individuals all over the place, how could you say that it's only in front of in Beis Din? They're blowing everywhere. You hear the shofar wherever you go in the streets. You're hearing the shofar being blown. You with me? Elolav du Birushalayim toikim bein bizman bezdin ubein shaloi bizman bezdin. This must be the difference. In Yerushalayim, they blew all day long. In Yerushalayim, on Shabbos. Ubeyavne bizman bezdin in, shelo bizman bezdin loy. Because of all these individuals blowing in Yavne, how can you say, as we did in the top line of the Gemara, that in Yavne they only blew in front of Bezdin? He said he was walking around and all he heard, I say you always wait for the first person to finish, and that was the main shul in Yerushalayim, in Yavne. The main shul had completed with their Bal Tfilah and their Bal Tzokea, and then everybody seems to be blowing. So now, when Rav Huna made the statement im Bezdin, he couldn't have meant im Bezdin in front of Bezdin, but im Bezdin can only mean at the same time when Bezdin was sitting. And that's not like we said at the very beginning. We thought Pshat was im Bezdin meant in front of Bezdin. In Yavne, they were only allowed, they were blowing everywhere else. Beside Yerushalayim, they were blowing in front of Bezdin. That's what we thought at the beginning. Malcolm.
Okay, one question. So the mitzvah of shofar is you have to be able to hear it. That's the mitzvah, isn't it? To hear that, listen to the shofar.
Oh yeah,
and you have to listen to, and the Talmud discusses what you're supposed to hear. So you're supposed to hear like 3 blasts and whatever. So if everyone's blowing and you can't even hear your voice, how can they be fulfilling the mitzvah?
Good, very good question. It obviously means you could hear the shofar coming from all different corners if you're walking down the streets. But obviously, if you're in that particular shul, you could be focused. You are, closer to that shofar. But very good point. We've had this point before. Can you hear two sounds straight? Koli lo mishtame. Or can you hear or can't you? Very good point. You have to say that there was suddenly, if you're walking the streets, you'd hear from, all different corners, all different directions, you'd hear the shofar being blown. But you're quite right. If you are hearing the shofar, you've got to be focused to make sure you are actually hearing the notes, as we know, Tekiah, Shvarim, Trua, Tekiah. Yeah, very good point.
Can I one extra little one? Does the whole discussion is about blowing it where there's a bet din, and
yes,
it started off by saying that obviously the problem was that you might walk 4 paces with the shofar, so
yes,
and therefore desecrate the Shabbat.
Right. So but what I'm saying is, if the Bezdin is, yeah, Corin.
Well, I mean, is the reason that this is focusing on, what is the reason that it's focusing on the Bet Din? Is it the idea that they'll spot you? It's like a safety net. Like if you're within reach of the Bet Din, you're not going to be doing any walking of.
Yes. Yes, you're right. Or the fact that the Bezdin's sitting, that people, are more aware that today is Shabbos. That's the point. Bezdin's sitting there. There's a bit of a titter, as they say. So, people are fearing, the Bezdin's there. The same idea about Yerushalayim, or in front of the Beis HaMikdash. In front of the Beis HaMikdash, you're not going to forget and desecrate the Shabbos in front of the Beis HaMikdash. It's going to be the forefront. The same thing if Bezdin is sitting, or so it seems. They did not make that decree as widespread as we thought. If the Bezdin is sitting, they were slightly more, as I say, more lenient on Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah. One of the reasons would be, yes, you're near the Bezdin, particularly, now this makes all the difference, you see. If you're in front of the Bezdin, then that's the only place you've been able to blow. then that would make make it even easier. You see, if you have got any shaila about, was it correct? Is the shofar good? Is it possible? All you have to do is, just go up the stairs type of thing and go and ask the rabbis. So that would be very good, and that would fit in very nicely with Rav Huna at the beginning, the top line of the Gemara, who says it's only in front of Bezdin, and that would be beautiful. Then you can say, I can understand perfectly why that should be. And that's really why we were taking on that as a first stance, and that's what we would prefer. Other than now we're saying, the Gemara is saying that he was walking the streets, he seemed to be hearing the shofar coming from everywhere, which I say sounds now like in Bezdin means it's at the same time that Bezdin is sitting, and then we have to use the other logical argument, which if Bezdin's sitting, people will not forget it's Shabbos. Not as strong as the first suggestion, which is if you're right in front of the Bezdin, nothing can go wrong. So anyway, that's what we're saying at the moment. And we seem to be having difficulty on what we suggested at the very beginning. Says the Gemara, lo, it's not right. You can still follow our original suggestion, which means only right in front of the Bezdin you could blow the shofar Shabbos Rosh Hashanah. De'ilu b'Yerushalayim. If it would have been Yerushalayim. Now, we've got to find something that's going to carry us through to the final statement of the Mishnah, and this is it. The Gemara is suggesting the following. De'ilu b'Yerushalayim toikim bein bifnei Bezdin bein shaloi bifnei Bezdin. This is the missing piece in the Mishnah. And that you can understand, Malcolm, if it's in Yerushalayim, in the Beis HaMikdash, you're not going to forget yourself. And in Yavna, only in front of the Bezdin in Shelo Bifnei Bezdin Loi. But just 1 minute. Didn't we have this statement about, remember, how many lines down? 6 lines down. Behor, beginning of the line. 7 lines down, actually. When Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef came to tell us what was going on in Yavne, he says, Ki Messiahim, you couldn't hear, it was shofar coming from all over the place. Says Tosfos, yes, but in the Beis Din's quarters. It's not that he was walking down the street and he heard this shul and that shul blowing the shofar. What he meant, and Tosfos said on the top line of Tosfos, his ears, the sound of the shofar coming from everywhere. They were all blowing in front of the Bezdin. That's the point. They came there, in other words, they had the balta care of the Bezdin, and then when he'd finished, there were presumably other minyanim taking place or other in the precincts of the Bezdin, and we now do not have to go back on what we suggested before. And what that therefore means is, yes, you must be in front of the Bezdin to blow, and that would suit us much better, as we said before. And what he meant when he said he heard so many different people blowing the shofar, it meant that there were all different pockets of people blowing. But you're quite right, Malcolm. People would have to be wary and careful that they were not getting mixed up with the two people's blowing, and that they could focus, and presumably they wouldn't sure that did happen. Also, it may have meant that it wasn't actually all happening simultaneously. What he might be saying there is you couldn't hear, you said that there was no time to talk because it was like one after the other. One person was blowing, then after that somebody else was blowing and somebody else was blowing, all these different people blowing, but it might not have been, let's say, simultaneous. So therefore, we still can follow our original suggestion, which means we've therefore got the following. And it fits in very nicely with the last part of the Mishnah. So it goes like this.
I mean, presumably, Norman, they all brought the shofar there before. We're talking about Shabbos, aren't we? So
yeah, so the shofar could have been there. Yeah,
they've all left their shofar in the
absolutely. If they want to blow the shofar, come to the Bezdin. You can blow there after the Baltzokea of the Bezdin is blown. Other people could come along.
Gesundheit. You've left before Shabbos. This is the shofar you've left before Shabbos.
Yes, absolutely.
You'd have to mark your shofar very clearly as yours, otherwise somebody might pick it up.
But that doesn't matter. Well, unless you're very particular, because there's nothing wrong with blowing. A borrowed shofar is fine. There is a rule, as we know, with a lulav.
The lulav you have to,
on the first day or first 2 days, the Chutz La'aretz, it's got to be lochem. It's got to be yours. But there's no rule about a shofar. It's got to be yours. As long as you got permission, I mean, and presumably people wouldn't mind, as long as it was going presumably from a professional Baltzokea, professional inverted commas, somebody knew what they were doing. You wouldn't want it mishandled. But there's no problem, Malcolm. But you could just have one. You could just have one shofar being blown by everybody, and everybody come along and blowing. They want to blow themselves. Mitzvah boy. Which say it's wonderful if you are a Baltzokea, you could blow the shofar.
Pre-pandemic.
I'm speaking from personal experience. I once brought a shofar to a shul to blow it the following day, and it was not in its place the next day. So it was a mystery. I think it was it sort of vaporized or something. It was spiritually.
You never found it,
but it didn't matter in the end. So I still fulfilled the mitzvah somehow.
But did you get it back?
Not that particular one.
Ooh.
I hope
some accident. I'm sure somebody by accident took your shofar. Okay. Okay. That's a bit.
But they didn't have wipes in those days. But maybe
no. I mean, back to Mervin's. But people could have their own shofars in different places. I mean, you could have, either locked away or not locked away in different places, but might not all be blowing the same shofar. But what they would do, they will come in front of the Bezdin, and then, and actually that's true. The real professionals, as we have a son, who's our son Moshe, I think he once blew, and I sent something around about it. The real professionals, when you get a shofar, you don't just go into a shop and buy yourself a shofar. You almost like get sized up like you would for a suit. Remember old Golds? Oh yes, it's just for you. Whatever size it was, perfect. No, what you do normally, you'd go to someone who's an expert, and they would size up. They would say, "Oh, with that type of mouth of yours and your build, this is the type of shofar you need." And it's very much like that. That people would have a particular size and shape of shofar which would suit their own mouth and say their size, etc. So it would be normal that people would have their own particular shofar, and you do find that people blow their own as people would do, I suppose, with their own particular violin, lahavdil, where they would have their own violin or their own clarinet. They wouldn't want to play somebody else's because they're used to that. The same thing with the shofar. So again, coming back to this, just let's revise, therefore. So what we're saying here is in Yavne or in any Bezdin where they were blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, on Shabbos, this was only in front of the Bezdin. They could have had their shofars all around. They will come there on Shabbos and blow. Whereas, this is the missing piece, in Yerushalayim, you didn't have to come in front of the Bezdin. It could be anywhere that they could blow in Yerushalayim with me, because you say the Amor and the year of Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash, meant that people would not carry unnecessarily and make mistakes. That's the first part. That's the missing halacha. And then the Mishnah goes on to say, in fact, there was something more than that. It wasn't just in the city of Yerushalayim that you were allowed to blow. You could blow, as we see at the end of the Mishnah, even if you could just see Yerushalayim. Or you could get there and you couldn't see it, but you could get there, and we'll see the last part of the Mishnah will be explained later. So you can see now how that Va'od comes in. Not only not in front of the Bezdin, You could even extend that outwards, and it could be as long as you could actually see Yerushalayim, you could blow as well. So there was an additional halacha, and that comes in at the end. So we now see we've got these differences, and it fits in very nicely. You see that ba'oid, and it fits in very nicely with the point of only in front of the Bezdin, which is then means it's unlikely any error would occur. Okay, on we go, gentlemen. Says the first wide line of the Gemara. Ika damasni lahod Rav Huna aho. Now, as I said at the beginning, we've got this statement of Rav Huna where he says, and this halacha applies with the Bezdin. And it's not quite clear what was Rav Huna talking about. There are lots of statements, lots of mishnayos, lots of brises. What was he talking about when he made the statement, ve'im Bezdin, with Bezdin? Once we know what he was talking about, then we can try and understand what im Bezdin meant. But let's first try, if you see what I mean, a bit complicated, isn't it? We've got a statement of Rav Huna. He says, I've got a halacha to tell you, gentlemen. Well, obviously it's taken out of context. He just says, im Bezdin. What was he talking about? So until now, we thought he was talking about this our Mishnah on this Masechta. Now, the Gemara is going to suggest something else. Second wide line. Tichsiv. The posuk that we know by Yikra. Ubeyom HaKippurim ta'aviru shofar b'chol artzachem. On Yom Kippur, this is talking about Yovel year. Also, ta'aviru. It's another word for blowing, which means it should be passed, the sound should pass through. B'chol artzachem. Everywhere in your land. Now 1 minute. Everywhere in your land. And then on that, we've got this statement in Bezdin. Let's just watch and see how this develops. Melamed, from there you see, anywhere in your land, you could be blowing the shofar of Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah, no, Yom Kippur means always Yom Kippur. Now it's interesting because Yom Kippur and Shabbos have similar halachas, and nevertheless the pasuk says Melamed shekol yochid v'yochid chayev litkaya. Every individual is chayev to blow. It's not this mitzvah. It doesn't tavirush. I might have thought when it comes to Yovel, it's just the Bezdin blows. It's not an individual mitzvah. There are mitzvahs which are not on the whole, on every individual. Shofar, of course, is on the individual. If you can't hear, you blow for yourself or you get somebody to blow for you. I might have thought maybe the mitzvah of shofar on Yom Kippur is only on the Bezdin. No, it's b'chol artzachem. As it says b'chol artzachem, it's clearly not just the Bezdin HaGodel, because it's b'chol artzachem. So from there you see shekol yochid v'yochid chayev litkaya. That's Minat Torah. Everywhere they should be blowing. Now, Omar Rav Huna, it's on that Rav Huna said, Ve'im Bezdin. My Ve'im Bezdin. Now it says, B'chol Artzachem, anywhere in the country. Well, every single, every few cubits doesn't have a Bezdin. But it says, B'chol Artzachem. And if he said it, you have to blow im Bezdin, any individual can blow. Notice that they did not make any decree about not blowing the shofar on Yovel, because otherwise it would never ever be blown on Yovel. You with me? On, let's say, Rosh Hashanah, you can have certain years, this coming year, it's on a Shabbos, but of course the year after, it's not on a Shabbos. Similarly, Lulav. You've got a Lulav, the first day falling on a Shabbos sometimes, otherwise it doesn't fall on a Shabbos. And you've got other days during the week. But if you're going to make a decree and say that you were scared you might carry the shofar and we're not going to allow people to blow on Shabbos, Well, Shabbos and Yom Kippur are both the same as far as carrying is concerned, in which case you'd have to annul the blowing of shofar, right? It would just never be blown on Yom Kippur. You with me? So therefore, that's just an aside. Okay? So number one, you're blowing the shofar on Yom Kippur, and B'chol Ha'atzlechem means anywhere in the country. On that, Rav Huna says, V'im Bezdin, with Bezdin. Says the Gemara, my V'im Bezdin. Says the Gemara, Bizman Bezdin. Only if Bezdin is sitting, you can blow anywhere you like in the country, up north, down south. La'afuke shelo Bizman Bezdin. As long as the Bezdin is sitting, you're allowed to blow. Perhaps coming back to this point we made before, Malcolm, that it seems like if Bezdin's sitting, perhaps there'll be a bit more fear, if you like. And we don't want to knock this blowing of the shofar entirely, otherwise you won't hear it. So says the Gemara, La'afuke shelo Bizman Bezdin delo. Says the Gemara, massive Rava. Rava said, I've got a question. Why? Now, Chekias, you've got, and I've got the word Rosh Hashanah there. Can you see that little aleph in square brackets? This superscript. It carries down to Hagos Hagro. Look around the side of the Gemara. You might can Hagos Hagro somewhere. Depends which edition you're using. Have you got Hagos Hagro? Yeah, and there, Agos Agor from the Vilna Gaon, he says, Gemara Tkias Yovel Doicha. Cain Tzorech Loima. That word Rosh Hashanah shouldn't be there, as we'll see, it doesn't fit. So it's Tkias Yovel Doicha Es Hashavos. Big Vulin means outside the whole Yerushalayim area, miles away. The blowing on Yovel is Doicha Shabbos. Doesn't matter. It's of course it's Doicha Yom Tov as well. Yom Kippur is the same as Shabbos in that way. I might have thought that maybe Shabbos is even more severe. No, it isn't. And when it comes to Yovel, it doesn't matter whether it's during the week or on a Shabbos. And look what it says: Ish uveisai. Each man, uveisoi. What does that mean, uveisoi? My ish uveisoi. Normally, beiso, euphemism if you like, or not even euphemism. Who is the shtub, a house in Yiddish? Oh, absolutely, the ish uveisoi. Now we'll come back to this in a minute. But ilay me ish ve'ishtoi. If you say it means a man and his wife would be blowing the shofar on Yovel Shabbos, says the Gemara, Itza Mima Chayve, is in fact a lady commanded to blow anyway. She would be out. If she wants to blow, she can, Gesundheit 8, but she wouldn't be commanded, no obligation, and we need to explain this in a moment, well, so just hold on. This mitzvah, blowing the shofar on Yom Kippur, is it time bound? Oh, yes, it certainly is. It's every 50 years. That's about as time bound as you could. I can't make anything say it certainly is time bound. It's not like every Yom Tov, which we just take shaking lulav is time bound. It's only Sukkos, shofar, time bound. Here, this is another example. It's time bound. It's every 50 years. So how can Ish Uveso mean each person and his wife? V'chol mitzvahs ha'sheishas mangaroma noshim peturos. They are exempt from all positive mitzvahs which are time bound. Why? We'll come back to that in a moment. Hold on. So what does it mean when this Brisa said that the Kiyas Yovel, Doiches Shabbos, outside Yerushalayim, far north, deep south, ish uvesoi. It doesn't mean ish uvesoi. It must mean elo ish bevesoi. Each person in his house. That I know it says be ish uvesoi. It means and his house. It means in his house. It can't mean and his wife, because she's not commanded, she's not obliged. But it means in his house. But it doesn't say anything more. That brisa just says when it comes to its Doicha Shabbos, blowing the shofar in Yovel, each person in his house. And it doesn't make any stipulation. This sounds like even Shelo Bisman Bezdin. There's no stipulation being made there. So this comes against what we've seen from Rav Huna. What did Rav Huna say? Rav Huna said that only the shofar can be blown at a time when Bezdin is sitting. But it doesn't make any stipulation here. Says the Gemara, you're right. I know we're on the back foot here, but nevertheless, that's exactly what Rav Huna was telling us. Lo olam bisman Bezdin. It's true. Doesn't say that in that brisa we just brought, but that exactly was the chiddush of Rav Huna. Again, so the statement of Rav Huna in Bezdin is now not on our Mishnah here in Rosh Hashanah, talking about the Tkiyas shofar of Rosh Hashanah, but it's talking about the Yovel shofar, and there it's telling us im Bezdin. It can't be bifnei Bezdin because it particularly says wherever you are, and wherever you are means exactly that. So if you're blowing everywhere, it says, Rav Huna says, im Bezdin. The only thing it can mean will be im Bezdin at the same time that Bezdin is sitting. So if Bezdin is sitting, you can blow anywhere that shofar of Yovel. Now, that's very nice. So we've had two options of where this statement of Rav Huna might go, but it's worth, as we've mentioned this point, something which always comes up, our ladies, bless them, this statement that we made here, mitzvah saseh shazman garoma noshim peturus. For whole mitzvah saseh, every positive mitzvah which is time-bound, noshim are peturus. Let's have an example of that. What would you say about talus? Wearing a talus, wearing tzitzis, is it time-bound? Yes. Nothing wrong wearing tzitzis.
It could be daytime.
Absolutely. In the daytime. Now, based on this, there's a wonderful teshuvah, and if I can call on Peter here, from Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal, going back to 1976, when it was really moving forward. The ladies group that wanted to wear talesim and everything else. And there's a wonderful tshuva he's got here. Have a look at the first paragraph. Well, it starts on the previous page, but there's only a line or two. V'nei reishis, this is Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zatzal. V'nei reishis shorach ladas, ki me'ikrei ho emuna, HaTorah Shelonu, Shekol HaTorah Bein Bichsav, Bein Balpeh, Nitno me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ba'atzma Ba'Sinai, with Moshe Rabbeinu, and we can't change things. Ve'i Efshar L'Shanis, Afilu Kutz Echot, one, it was like a hair, Lola Hokel, Lola Achmer. Oh, carry on. Ach Nitz Tavinu, it's true. You want to make a fence, or we say we're scared of something, or a geder, then yes, the Sanhedrin would have an obligation. And those elders and wise of the Torah, they can make certain tikkunim, takonos, isa, eza dvorim, vein lechayev. Ach b'hodo mirabonon shula takono ulasiog. Umizman, from the time shenis pazarnu, that we've been spread b'cholo arotzos, Les lonu koach zeh. We've lost that. Ela sheyesh l'chachomim l'sakein kol mokoim umikol eze takona rak l'mikoimon. You can only do that for a short period in your own area. Okay. Now drop down. It would take us too long. Here we are, where it says, yes. Well, go up 2 lines. We don't understand the stump in shape. We don't really understand the reasons for mitzvahs. Nevertheless, there are plenty of reasons why Hashem particularly made certain rules. But nevertheless, this is the point. Ikegam ta'omim, beginning of the line, ta'omim gluyim lakel. Ki stam noshim ba'olam. Generally, the ladies, einam, they're not all wealthy, can't always afford to have, au pairs and everything else. Va'aleim mutal, on them, they have the job, gidul hayolodim vayolodos, bringing up the children, the young children. She malocha hayoser chashuva la kodesh baruch hu ula Torah. It's most important. V'chein boro Hashem yisborach b'teva, in the nature of kol min v'min, every species, the Baal Chai, shanekevos yigadlu es havlodos. It's the ladies, the female of the species. Not we're talking about ladies here, we're talking about the female. Va'af es min ha'odom, similarly with the humans. Lahoitzim min haklal, they are not outside that general rule. Shegam teva hanoshim mesugul yoser, more appropriate, more fitting, legidul hayalodin. For this reason, in other words, besides the reasons which we don't understand, there are some reasons which are pretty clear that Hashem, therefore, where are we up to? Very good, thank you, the arrow. Mitzadze heikel aleim, lenient with them, shelo lachayvon belimud Torah. They have no chiyuv. They can if they want. We'll see in a moment. That's what he's saying. In other words, the Torah's exempted them because they've got this huge role, and as he's explained there, chashuva, most important role in general. Now, it's true, there may be some people who are not in this situation, or maybe the elderly and not bring up any children, doesn't matter. The Torah's given a blanket exemption from all these mitzvahs to enable ladies to fulfill that role without any concern at all. Drop down to the next paragraph, please. Ibra, it's quite true. The ikarashus, there's certainly permission. L'chol isha. They can if they want to. Mitzvah, mitzvahs, they even get reward. According to Tosfos, Machlukas about this, Rambam Tosfos, they can be eaten bracha. Our minhag is Shemakaimus mitzvah shofar, v'lulav, v'gam mavorchos, next line, next. So he said they can if they want to. There's nothing wrong. They can if they want to. But what he's explaining is they're not compelled to do this mitzvah. They've been released from this mitzvah, that they need to have no qualms, that they can hopefully fulfill that role to which they're so suited. Now look at this next paragraph. For Shanis, there's more here, but running out of time. Vishenis, next paragraph, please. Drop down there. Vishenis, very powerful. This was obviously at a time where I think it was the ladies there were lots of groups demanding rights, if you like, to do all the mitzvahs, etc. Vishenis sorach ladas, you need to know. Ki ein zeh, the fact that they're exempt from these mitzvahs, bishvil shenoshim pechusos, it's not that they are less. And he's not just saying this because Rabbi Moshe is not like that. He would say it as it is. But magdregas hakdusha, it's not that they are on a lower category me'anoshim. De le'inyan kedusha, this is worth remembering. De le'inyan hakdusha, shovois la'anoshim, they are equivalent. Le'inyan shaychus, their relationship and chiyuv to mitzvahs, rak mitzad hakdusha, if it's anything to do with holiness or kedusha, de ikka b'Yisrael hu tzivui ha-mitzvahs, v'gam lenoshim nemru, and to ladies it said, kol ha-karuye de kedusha, wherever it talks about kedusha, it applies just the same, ladies and men. Bein techilas t'nai kabbalah satorah, it says, v'yisem li segula, you will be my precious nation. It means the ladies as much as the men. V'yatem tihu li goy kodosh, shenema, next line, lebeis Yaakov, elu anoshim. V'sagei livnei Yisrael, elu anoshim. They're both there. Ubein anshe kodesh tihu li, you should be people. That word people doesn't mean men of holiness. Shebe mishpatim b'yisem kadoshim deshmini. Everybody knows Apostle Kadoshim. Ukadoshim tiyu v'yisem kadoshim and Parshas Kadoshim. V'chi am kadosh ato l'Hashem Elokecha in Parshas Re'eh u'b'chol makom shenimtza in kedusha de Yisrael ne'ama gam lenoshim. V'lochein therefore gam anoshim, ladies as well. They can make a brocha shekidishonu b'mitzvah. You made us holy with these commandments, because it applies just as much to ladies as to men. Kamo anoshim. Av al mitzvah shelo chivus on Torah. Even on mitzvahs where they're not commanded, they are still part of Klal Yisrael. Rak shehu kula. It's a leniency. Me'ezei tamei Hashem yisparach. From Hashem himself. Sherodza lahokel anoshim, to be lenient and reduce from them, as we mentioned before. V'lo mitzad guri usa. It's not because they are inferior, chas v'sholem. And look at this. U'bechiyuvim bein ish le'ishtoi. When there are obligations between man and wife, isa chiyuv hakovod alo ish le'ishtoi, v'alo ish le'ba'alo, whether it's a man to his wife, the wife to the husband, below shum chiluk. Plenty of the ladies were nevios. They are not less inferior. Devorah, etc. Miriam, not inferior at all. In fact, there are plenty of places when, in fact, it says the ladies are on a higher level than the men. No lack of honor, respect. Don't think because they've been exempt that they should feel inferior. Not at all. There's no reason they need to feel hard done by. This is what the rabbi who's written in the Shaila obviously had problems with the ladies of his shul. Be strong, and therefore people who feel that they've got to do these mitzvahs, it's not true. If they want to, they can. And then the last line, to his community, the men, the women, and the children. And he finishes up with respect. Moshe Feinstein, beautiful tshuva, worth remembering. If ever you want to look it up, it is in the 6th volume. We go back to seeing each other now. 6th volume of Igros Moshe, and it's in Chelek Daled Devar Chaim, chapter 49. Beautiful tshuva there. As we mentioned, this point about noshim are exempt. It came up here, by the way. David's got a question.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to me to answer the question of why it is that in the 75 years of the state of Israel, the Haredi parties have never had a single woman representing them in the Knesset.
That's that not talking about mitzvahs. We're talking about.
No, I agree. But I'm saying that suggests a sort of chauvinism, which.
No, it's not the chauvinism. I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't be. I think it's this public face of the ladies, which they prefer not to have. I think that's the situation amongst the Haredim. It's not because they're inferior in any way. If you look about the numbers of people who used to come outside Reb Chaim's wife for advice and guidance and brachas was incredible. What he said, I mean, each one saying that. I think it's this public face of the ladies which they didn't really want to have. I think that's what it was. It was more because of the, as you say, tznius, modesty, more than anything else. Not because they felt inferior and they know all the answers. That's not true, as we've seen from Rav Moshe.
If it was good enough for Devourer to be the leader of the people,
yeah, absolutely.
Nobody seemed to worry too much then about the modesty. So we seem to have gone backwards.
Yeah, no, that maybe we have. Maybe you're right. Maybe we have on that area. You're quite right. But you can see that I see it's more the tznius and say where the generation is today compared. Maybe the whole generation's fairly on a low level compared to as it was in those days. But yeah, there's no reason at all why ladies can't be nevios even today for advice, seeking for advice, and no reason to stop them if they want to perform mitzvahs. They can. All he's saying is they've been exempted, but they are on an equal footing and in many instances of a higher level. That's really what he's saying.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
Very elementary question. Who exempted the ladies?
There's a posuk in the Torah which exempts them.
Well, which?
There's a posuk in the Torah. It's only mitzvahs which are time bound. That's the exemption. So it's not as if it's the rabbis have said that. It's already in the Torah. We have that mentioned in Gemara Sukkah and other places, and Gemara Brachas. There are sources. The source is not just made up, and the men trying to keep things for themselves. No, that's very clear. So at the moment, if I can at this point turn to Peter, and I'll tell you why I'm turning to Peter. I have been thinking about, I think it's only right that we, Beli Neder should be taking on something for, sadly, our two loyal, very well loved members, Sylvain and Charles as well. And the suggestion was, I know Sammy, you'll go for this. No, not quite as much as a Mishnah Yomis. Mishnah Yomis did 2 Mishnahs a day. The suggestion is that we do, maybe, those that can, I say nobody's being compelled to, maybe 1 Mishnah a day. Let's see how we go. We'll start with Psochim, Beli Neder, and I say those that can manage. What I've sent Peter, and he'll go through this right now, is that you can go do whatever you like. But I thought of Psochim. I'll tell you why. Because if we do 1 Mishnah a day, eventually we'll all catch up with you, Sammy, because you're doing 2 Mishnahs a day, and you're going to still do Eruvin and Psochim. By the time you finish Psochim, then we'll also finish Psochim, because it's 1 a day. We'll see how 1 a day goes, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully we get to the end of Psochim. But I think it's only right that we should be doing something. Now, what I've sent you is, it's called the portal, which is very nice. It's actually audio. It's meant for 2 Mishnahs a day, but we're only doing 1. 2 Mishnahs a day was meant to take him 8 or 9 minutes. So obviously dividing by 2. So it's not going to be, tremendously onerous. But that's a nice, you can do it as you like, as you please. And Peter will also show us how you can link up. And at the same time, if you want that audio, you can go to elsewhere. So that one's very nice, very short, and going through the Mishnah, explained very nice. I haven't been through everything, but I have heard him, and it seems very good. You may like the accent, you may not like the accent of the person doing that. You may find your own, and at the same time, we could have the actual Mishnah up And then people can do their own perushim as they please, or the minimum, as we say. But it would be very nice, and I think it would be a wonderful nechama to Judy and Mrs. Corman too. The Shiur is doing what they can, and certainly remembering our very close friends. So if I can turn to you, Peter, just to show you what. Perhaps tomorrow, sometime, an email will go out just showing you the links. But it's if you can, one Mishnah a day. It's not, as I say, too onerous, especially if you've got this nice audio, which again is going to be a couple of minutes, no more. But it's only one Mishnah a day. You can do more, but one Mishnah a day. And then hopefully we're doing this as a group. And it's one Mishnah we're doing for both. So it's not two Mishnahs a day at the moment. One Mishnah for, I say, we're learning for. You can always do Chazorah. So we're learning for these individuals. And Peter, if you just take us through a little bit.
So what Norman is suggesting is that we study Mishnah from this Mishnah portal, which I will send you the link. Here is an email I sent to Norman earlier.
Yeah, I'll send something back to you about that. Yeah, it's good.
And so the link takes you to this portal. Some people also have this portal on their mobile phones, and it's known as Mishnah Yomi. So I remember Mark has it, for example, and you can pick up the speech for the day.
I think there are quite a lot of these Mishnah Yomis, but this one I found, short and sweet and clear.
At the same time, we have this wonderful resource, which is Sepharia, which if I just separate them out, you can look on Sepharia and you can see the writing of the Mishnah, and I'll be quiet for a minute and I'll just play some of the audio track that goes with it. I hope you can hear it.
Psachim chapter 1, Mishnah 1, obviously dealing the Masechta of Psachim, dealing with the laws surrounding Pesach, and many different laws we're going to be dealing with, including the temple and the sacrificial, the Pesach offering, etc., that was required in those days. But the Mishnah is going to start off with a well-known law that we do, and that is that a person has to search their house Erev Pesach and get rid of the chometz in their house. A person's house has to be clean of chometz. And the reason a person's house has to be clean of chometz is that not only is it you're not allowed to not allowed to eat chometz on Pesach, we're also not allowed to own chometz on Pesach. So even just owning chometz is a problem. And therefore, it says the Mishnah.
So that's the audio track, and in this wonderful resource we have called Sepharia, you can find Mishnah Pesachim with the same verses we're studying, and you can see it in Hebrew, you can see the English translation, you can pick up the commentaries, maybe you'd like to go to Bartanura, and it's understood. I think that's really what I would explain in terms of the technical aspects. Obviously, Norman will cover the halakha and that sort of thing. But if you're agreeable, I will send round to the group the same email I sent to Norman, showing you the links. Thank you, Norman.
Yeah, no, it's very good. So again, it's if you can see actually when you went for the portal, you could see that Mishnah is actually 6 minutes. As you started it, it says at the end how long it's going to be. So it's 6 minutes worth. Very nice, I think. But well, let's see how we go. And just say it's 1 minute, one Mishnah a day for both for the moment.
When do we start?
We're starting tomorrow.
Okay.
Now, I know you might want to join us as well, Sammy. I know you're doing Erevin and you'll be onto Pesachim soon. but then for another Mishnah for 6. It'll be nice if you want to, you join us too. Although I know you'll be catching up in 6 weeks' time, all being well. When you finish Eruvin, and then Pesachim's next. But it's one particularly because it was Charles. People may remember. It's really not that long ago. It was like last December, wasn't it, that he made that incredible siyum of the whole of Shas together with you, Sammy, and it was incredible. Where he really picked up, and he was doing 2 mishnayos a day, and thick and thin. And as you're saying, I'm sure, Sammy, you could talk a lot about it and about the advantages of doing the Mishnah Yomis.
There's no doubt. I mean, one thing that Charles said when I said to him, "What you're going to do now that you've finished?" and he says, "I'm going to start again." And he says, "I'm doing it again." And I said, and he says, "And you should do it again." And I said, "Yes, okay, Charles, I will." And that's how we started. There's no doubt. There's a lot to learn, a lot to understand, and it gives you an overview of the whole thing. And it's been very useful for me anyway. Then the second time, it's even better.
Yeah.
The Mishnah Yomi app on my phone here gives you the text of each commentary as well, so you don't have to swap between screens. It's all there.
And you've got the portal on there as well. That portal?
No. You just download the app and it automatically gives you all the access to all the Mishnayos.
Yeah, so you got the Mishnah, but have you got the audio link as well?
Yeah. The audio's there. Oh, sorry, it's just gone off. The audio. You just play the audio at the bottom. There's an audio bar at the bottom as well.
Oh, right, and that audio bar is the same that we've got here.
Correct.
Or is it different?
It's the same. Yeah. So that's on the App Store. I think it's on.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's amazing, and it's free.
Yeah. Noch besser, as they say.
Noch besser. Yes, exactly. Nothing like free.
Absolutely. It would be. And it's worth knowing. Actually, I think the actual Mishnah Yomish, which is 2. Let's see how we go. So let's see how we go with Pesachim first. Beli Neder, and again, it's if people can manage, if you can't, that's also fine. But I say it's not too much. Actually, the whole of the Mishnah Yomis 2 a day will take you under 6 years. It's I think 5 3/4, isn't it? Or is it? It's around 6 years to finish the whole lot, which is nice. It's not too long. We should all be well in Eretz Hashem to get there. But let's see how we go. I think it's a wonderful. And unless anybody's got some other ideas, please throw them in. But otherwise, we can go with that. Yeah. Do you want a show of hands or no? Whatever. Yeah. People are agreeable. Okay. Excellent. I think it would be nice, and I'm sure it would be a great nachama to the family and for us too. Remember, those are our wonderful friends. Okay. Thank you, Peter. I'll send you on another note, Peter. And then perhaps either go out tonight or tomorrow, and that'll be great. And we'll start tomorrow, all being well. Tonight is the 4th of